It all starts with a sketch. I do a pencil drawing of my imagination of a tan cotton suit with a blouse, and then I transfer it to a color rendering on bristle board. And there it is. So now I go fabric shopping. And that's what I came up with in Fabric Choices. And for the skirt, I used the Hazel and Mallard vintage pattern number 4856 View B. And this pattern was downloaded from the internet, and I printed it out, and you see me here taping all the 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper together for the skirt, and then cutting out the pattern, and now I'm cutting out the fabric for the skirt. And I probably will not buy those type of patterns again. It took a long time to put those patterns together. And I'm also tracing out parts of the jacket. And I used for the jacket the Butterick B 6400 View C. And these patterns that are made from the tissue, I ironed them and then I trim them out with my rotary cutter. I'm also working on the blouse and sleeve patterns. And then I'm cutting out lining, which is the polka dot material, cotton material. So I'm cutting out all the lining pieces for the jacket and the skirt, after I've already cut out the skirt and jacket pieces from the tan linen. And now I move on to cutting out interface pieces. And the interfacing I used this time was the sew in, not the iron on. And there was the patterns that I used for the blouse and sleeves. I combined two patterns into one. The blouse was the McCall's M8040 View B, and the sleeves were the Simplicity R10155A, the 1930s vintage View F. Here I'm cutting out the fabric for the blouse and the sleeves, and now I'm starting to sew the blouse pieces together. Please notice that I'm using a Black Singer machine in the beginning. I'm in my sewing room, and I have also cut out all of the interfacings for the blouse in black. And you will notice on my seams I am using pinking shears to cut all my seams to stop them from fraying. Here I'm cutting out the little elastic loops that are going at the end of the cuff of the sleeve for the buttons. And now I'm working on a different machine. I'm working on my Brother machine that is like 30 years old, because my black one went out on me and had to take it to the sewing machine shop. So here I'm lining up the buttons and also the hem lace. I'm using the lace hem to put on the ends of the cuff, so there was some stability for the buttons and the elastic loops. There's the buttons I'm sewing on. I'm using my pins to line up with the loops so that they are evenly spaced. And there was a lot of buttons on each cuff, and those sleeves were really hard to do. I will not use that sleeve pattern again. Now I'm sewing up the skirt. I'm putting in the darts. And I'm also doing the same steps on the lining. And of course, I ironed all of my darts. And now I'm sewing the skirt pieces together and the lining. And iron, iron, iron. Iron the seams open. And now I'm taking some black piping and putting it in between the seams of the lining and the skirt. Which I think gives a nice tailored touch to the skirt. Now I'm sewing the lining to the skirt with the black piping. That'll come out in between the seams. Trim my seams, do more ironing. Now I'm working on the hem of the skirt, and again I'm using a white hem tape now. And the skirt's done, so now I'm working on the jacket. And the jacket is very involved. There is a lot of pattern pieces, and you basically are doing everything twice because I'm doing lining as well. So everything you do for the jacket, you're doing for the lining. Putting in darts and pleats. I'm now sewing in the interfacing. Interfacing gives stability to certain parts of the jacket, like in the front bodice. And then I have to do the same thing with the lining. Sewing in the interfacing, ironing it down. These particular darts, you can see I was slitting those darts open. That's a particular technique there. Working on lining for the jacket. Sewing the pieces together. And these are the sleeves. So I have done the lining for the sleeves, and that is more black piping that I'm putting into the jacket in between the seams and also the sleeves. I did not use the pinking shears to cut the seams on the inside of the jacket because it will be completely lined and you won't see them, unlike the blouse. Now I'm putting in boning. The jacket has boning in it, so I'm cutting all the boning, sewing that in. Those are sleeves. I've put the black binding in. Now I'm ironing the seams, turning them inside out, and then iron them again on the outside. Linen is a cotton material that wrinkles very easily, so you have to do a lot of ironing. Now I'm sewing in the sleeves into the jacket. I've already added the collar. It's a mandarin collar on the jacket. Trimming my curves. And now I'm working on the lining. So the original pattern has just interfacing, or I'm sorry, an effacing. And I decided I wanted to completely line the whole jacket. So I'm adding the facing to the lining, sewing it in And then to cover up the seams between the facing and the lining, I added rickrack. And the rickrack came from my mom's collection. She probably had that since the 1970s. Now I'm adding the lining to the jacket and sewing it in. Those are the lining to the sleeves. I'm putting those in. Doing the cuffs on the sleeves of the jacket. Trimming. Turning the jacket inside out from the lining. Iron, iron, iron. And now I'm hand stitching the lining down from inside the sleeves to the lining of the jacket using invisible stitches. And now I'm doing some top stitching. Top stitching just helps keep the lining and the jacket together, plus it's decorative. And now I'm adding snaps to the blouse, and that was very difficult trying to find the right combination of snaps and tools, but I finally figured it out after purchasing 3 different types of tools. I'm also adding snaps to the jacket, or actually this is the skirt. I'm adding snaps to the skirt. So I have to punch a hole in them, add the snaps, and then I hand sew buttons on the skirt. And these buttons were all vintage buttons. And now the jacket. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm punching holes in for the snaps, pounding them in, and then sewing on buttons, vintage buttons, over the snaps so you can't see them. And now I'm sewing 2 vintage buttons on the back of the jacket, right at the peplum. And iron, more ironing. And now I'm steaming the blouse and skirt and jacket because we're getting ready to go to LA for the photo shoot. So we are packing our car and driving from Portland, Oregon to Los Angeles. And there we go. We arrived at our photo shoot location, got up the next morning, made breakfast for everyone, and began the photo shoot. That's my photographer, Deepika, who's checking her lighting. And then Deepika also ended up being my model because we just could not get my other models scheduled. So Nicole Ray from Nicole Ray Artistry is doing the hair and makeup on Deepika. She does fabulous work. She's the best in the industry. So Deepika is not only my photographer, but is also the model. And then Nicole is doing hair and makeup and will also be the photographer. So there's Deepika. I got her dressed and doing final touches on the hair since we added the hat. Doing some light testing. Photo shoot was done We left California right when there was a storm warning. See the palm trees on the right? It was very, very windy. Then in the middle part of California, there was a tornado warning, which was right over there. And we made it home.